That Great Business Show, Ireland's best business podcast.
ThatGreatBusinessShow.com is brought to you by De Facto Shaving Oil, the best anyone can get. Made in Ireland, sold worldwide.
Welcome to episode 110 of That Great Business Show, Ireland's best business podcast. Posting on the 21st of October 2022. Fáilte, I am Conal O'Moran. Today, as we record, it's Information Overload Day. No, I keep telling you, I don't know who makes this stuff up. However, on this day, we do allow ourselves to take a break and listen to a podcast. Enjoy. Some housekeeping before we start. Don't like us. Do share us. Press the share button on LinkedIn so that the rest of the world will know you listen to quality podcasts. And of course, it's good for us too. You can also send the link on WhatsApp to your buddies in business. And last week I mentioned our new legal podcast, The Fifth Court. Episode 3 was released this week, and wowzers, it is number 3 in the Apple charts already. So well done to my colleagues, barristers and presenters Peter Leonard and Mark Tottenham. The Fifth Court, worth a listen. All our great tips and insights on That Great Business Show are brought to you, as always, thanks to De Facto Shaving Oil, made in Mayo, sold worldwide. And gifting season, as our American friends would say, is almost upon us. What a great gift from a child to a dad, granddad, uncle, brother, or anyone, man or woman, who shaves, than a great value bottle of De Facto Shaving Oil. Pop on to defactoshave.com, buy it, and Karina will make sure it's in your letterbox because it's designed to fit just a day or two later. Do it now and have that box ticked early.
De Facto Shaving Oil, smooth as.
And so to episode 110, there is something about Limerick. It's got an energy all of its own, and there is a real can-do buzz about the place, and I love it. For example, Protex AI is a very young Limerick-based company involved in industrial workplace safety that has raised $18 million for global expansion, as you do in your first 18 months of existence. Part of that cash came from Elkstone, who joined Team GBS on episode 99. And if your business is thinking of raising money, the Elkstone team gives a simple 101 explanation of what they want to see on a pitch deck on episode 99, and it is worth a listen. Protex AI got on to the hugely prestigious Y Combinator startup program, a sure sign that others see big potential in this early stage company. What they do is they use computer vision technology to identify health and safety issues, minimize injuries, and make industrial workplaces safer. Co-founders Dan Hobbs and Ciaran O'Mara, welcome to That Great Business Show. First of all, Dan, Ciaran, where did you meet?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for having us, by the way.
You're very welcome.
It's a cool intro. Yeah, we met, so myself and Ciaran, we go way, way back. We met when we were at Smallies back when we were, 12, 13 years old or so, at the BT Young Scientist and Technology
Mad, isn't
competition.
It?
Yeah, good bit of it.
And you ended up working together.
Yeah.
Now, there was a little bit of a journey in between.
Oh, yeah. Well, we always had the story of...
Yeah, I think that first time we met was quite funny. I was maybe 2 years younger than Dan. I still am 2 years younger than Dan. But I remember he came up to me.
He's very bright.
I know.
Very bright.
Yeah, that's easy. That's why he's a tech guy.
So Dan actually came up to the stand, and I remember looking up. He was about a foot towering over me. About a year later, he came back, and I was looking down at him. It was probably a foot.
I've been speaking to his chest ever since.
Yeah.
Chest is going to be around this room soon. And you went to different schools, you were in different counties, you did different things. How did you end up meeting together and starting business together?
It was an interesting one. So we both have very different backgrounds, like you said, and went to different colleges. And I was up in Dublin, from Kildare, both up in Dublin. Ciaran was down in Limerick. But I had just sold my previous company. an exam software
Give
company.
a little bit of background there, because that is fantastic. What age were you when you sold, not created?
24, 25.
I hate you, you know that.
Yeah. It was fun though. It was good learning experience. I never had a CV, which is cool. So I just started companies and sold.
I'm not going to ask you how much you might have made, but did you make some money?
Yeah, a good bit. Yeah,
fantastic.
Enough to do something with it. So paid enough to pay the phone bills.
Good.
Anyway, but yeah, it was called Better Examinations. So it was an exam software company for universities. So it was a lot on the helping lecturers make it harder to cheat, actually. So
well, now, having this chat, myself and Ciaran had a chat about his exams. He got a first class honour. He was first in his class, but he did it the clever way. Ciaran, tell the world exactly how you worked the system.
Yeah, so I think in college, I don't think anyone likes exams in college. People like meeting people. They might like sharing ideas, learning new things, but the exam side of it is sometimes the piece that people don't like. What we did was, I had maybe 4 or 5 buddies that we studied together. We were quite strategic in the way we studied. So we dissected past exam papers. We had a shared Excel sheet that we, broke questions down by category, and pulled out kind of a distribution of what questions were coming up. And we did quite well in the end. We were able to predict maybe the machine learning stuff that we're doing now that actually predicts workplace accidents wasn't too far off the kind of system we were using back then. But yeah, we had some good fun along the way doing it.
Yeah, the pair of you put smiles on my faces. You're so bright, so driven, so clever. And now, as I mentioned earlier, your 18-month-old company or thereabouts, you've raised 18 million quid. Like, that is a chunk of change, as I often say. Let's go into that company and talk about it. First of all, I did describe it. It's clever. So who wants to talk about it?
Probably the best man, the tech side of it.
Yeah, maybe start off. So maybe a bit of background as to where it came from. As Dan said, Dan had just exited a previous company. I had been in kind of software for a while. I got my first software job at the age of 16, 17 with a fintech company called Cashbook Limited down in Limerick.
Do you know what I was doing at 16? I think I was on a bicycle delivering stuff. It's not quite the same thing, is it?
So my mom actually wanted me to get a job in Duns. And I was kind of more the software route. I used to lock myself in my room, learning how to code and building little games and programs. And I got a lucky break back when I was 17 in the summer. Worked with a fintech company, was exposed to a lot of the technical stuff and maybe some of the sales stuff as well. That kind of progressed through university.
Did you work while you were in college with them, did you?
Well, I was in college for the last 2 years. I did part-time. That was, really enjoyed it.
And what was that company?
It was called Cashbook Limited.
And are they still in business?
They're still in business. They
Good
are,
for them.
of course. They're only down the road from me, actually, down in Limerick, away from me well. So I used to walk down at lunchtime to do a couple of hours. And yeah, really enjoyed it. Then I went into analog devices for my co-op, which is your kind of cooperative educational placement in my course, which was electronic and computer engineering. Really, really enjoyed that. Had some great times there, met some really, really bright people and learned a lot. But then coming out of university, I wanted something different. So I decided to go back into research, go back and do a PhD. But I was maybe 2 years into that PhD, and this guy over here is quite a good salesman. So he sold me on dropping out to set Protex.
But you were in different places. How did you find Ciaran, Dan?
Well, we'd always kept in touch. So we actually met every single year in what's the pub in? It's by the RDS, I forget what it's called. Crows pubs by the RDS every single year at the Young Scientists, and we'd always say we'd do something. Didn't know what it was, but we'd always say we'd do something. So Ciaran was studying the...
What do you mean? How many years did you go in for the Young Scientists?
Every year after, I'd say, was it? So...
And you're not meant to, I think you told me you were 12 or 13, you're not meant to be in Crow's Pub when you're 12 or 13.
You're not, surprisingly, yeah. I don't know, maybe the back door. No, not to put them under the bus. Yeah, they always have everybody, all the kind of ex BTYS crowd go back.
Do they kind of meet up? That's a really interesting one. Yeah,
it's really nice. So it's nice to kind of reconvene on it. So always said we do something, and then he had the computer vision PhD background. I was kind of itching to do something again, and then we actually had a solution before a product. which is usually the other way around. Normally we have a problem before and then you find a solution. We were kind of the opposite. So we knew we wanted to put computer vision somewhere. We just didn't know where. So first we started looking at shopping centres, see if we could identify crowd flows, which you could put more expensive products places. But then we're like, who really benefits from that? And then one day your auntie was talking to you. And
yeah, so a family member who's worked in the industry for quite a while, and there was an unfortunate death on one of the production lines that she was working on. And I think when she told me that story, it was, a dreadful accident that happened. And we kind of bounced ideas off each other. We had that computer vision, technology that we wanted to put somewhere, and we felt that to really make a difference, and as entrepreneurs, you always want to have impact in the work that you're doing, and we felt it was somewhere to explore. So I think we talked over 100, 200 health and safety professionals in the course of about 3 months, I would say. And
Whoa, that's a lot of research.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So it was hard for me. I didn't write a line of code for about 3 months. Because I knew if I did write,
I know that feeling.
Yeah. I get that every day. It's crazy.
He tells me if he doesn't hear tappy tappy in the back, he knows I'm not working. So so that was really important for us, and we really got a sense as to how health and safety as an industry worked. And one thing we started to see straight away, and Dan has a really good kind of take on this. It's very hard to think outside the box. Or it's easy, to think outside the box if you've never been inside it in the first place.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
And we were coming in from the outside and said, God, this is really reactive in the way health and safety is working. Accidents are happening. People are reporting on them and they're having conversations. And then, Dan goes, look, we have computer vision. Is there any way we can actually spot these accidents before they occur?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I suppose, the proactive angle that Protex takes, is actually picking up these thousands and thousands of behavioural pieces, so near misses, people almost getting hurt, and trying to report on them and learn from them before something dreadful happens. And that was, I suppose, the inception of what Protex is today.
Yeah, we got some cool people kind of trusting us for us, like Procter & Gamble and DHL and Marks and Spencer and stuff like that. So.
Well, you bounced those names out, and I saw those names on your releases and stuff. But they didn't fall out of the sky. Who goes knocking on the door? Say to her.
Yeah, try to.
Ciaran points at Dan.
Yeah.
Yes. And Dan, when you go in there and say to Marks and Sparks, do you go to Ireland? Do you go to their UK HQ? Or where do you go?
Anywhere. Well, anyone will talk to us, to be honest with you.
Well, take Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah,
How did that happen?
The really interesting ones, we always find different routes in. I'm a terrible reader. I tend to not read many business books. We just make up stuff is going on, but we have an awesome, not just myself, we've got an awesome team at Protex now that support that. But certainly the first few, I think anybody who has a startup, those first 0 to 1 is really, really difficult rather than going from 1 to 100. And a lot of it's just LinkedIn. It's just finding the right people you need to talk to.
But how do you find them? LinkedIn?
You just,
okay.
it's just who's head of health and safety for Marks and Spencer, who's the head of health and safety for Tesla or whatever. And we just ping them on LinkedIn and say, hey,
Here's a bizarre question for you. Do you use the free LinkedIn or do you use professional LinkedIn?
I use the free one. I absolutely took the free trial to another extent on it. So I hope they're not chasing me they're not involved in this. Right? I just ping everybody. I think what people get when they do startups is I can't tell anybody what I'm doing. But sure, if you do that, then you get nowhere.
That is a big learning, isn't it? I mean, keeping secrets is useless.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this world.
Yeah, I think in what we're doing, sharing ideas is really how you go from, as Dan said, 0 to 1. If you share an idea and maybe someone else has a different kind of opinion on what you should be doing, that's where you take learnings and you trial these ideas and they don't work, and then suddenly they do work. And in the cases that they do work, that's probably where you learn your least. It's when they don't work. So the thousands and thousands, people are maybe at home at night scrolling on TikTok, Dan's scrolling on LinkedIn, trying to find people to talk to. And it's not necessarily to sell to, it's just to learn from, to ask them, what problems are you having in your workplace? And then maybe trying to get advice as to how Protex can kind of tweak our product to help them.
I am a huge LinkedIn fan and I use it all day, every day, to the extent that very recently they actually kicked me off for a while.
Did they?
So they did. There is a point.
Addicted.
Actually, Ciaran, make sure that he gets kicked off, because that'll prove that he's actually doing his work properly. Now, back to the business, and you're at 26 employees, I think, now.
Yeah.
And you've covered Ireland. Where else have you covered?
Customers or people?
Customers.
Customers, yeah. So we're quite active in Canada. We've started in the US now.
Well, stop on Canada.
Yeah.
Why did you start on Canada?
Really random. A lot of stuff is quite like random when we think about. We were doing
Now,
our
both
board
of you
deck.
have done your Y Combinator,
We
and
did, yeah.
part of that teaches you how to focus, and focus.
Yeah, what we've kind of got out of Y Combinator, I think. I don't think necessarily we were changing our way of thinking, but it certainly makes you think big. Ireland, you can tend to get a bit of the, okay, we have to start in Ireland first, but they're just like, why? Just go big, and try to hit loads. So that definitely helped. We didn't get to go out to San Francisco. We did it during COVID.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we did it from a
But I
lovely
presume
little,
that they let you go over for reunions and stuff.
we were too busy to go, actually. We didn't go this. We were supposed to go, remember, was it?
Yeah. We got over in March.
We did, yeah.
To meet up with some batchmates that we'd met. And there's just such a buzz around entrepreneurship over there.
Yeah.
And you're talking to people who have similar ideas or different ideas. But the energy over there from an entrepreneurship standpoint is just it's electrifying.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a hard question. What was on the bull quotient? What was the stuff that you thought, well, hang on a second now, this is a waste of time? There must be something on those programs where you just say, oh, come on.
Do you know, I thought it was really funny how, like Ciaran said, everyone's really like bullish over there and whatnot. I think Ireland's, before going into that, Irish people, I remember someone said, they said, an Irish person's really good at something when they say they're not very good at it. Do you know, they'd be top like athlete in a game. They'd be do a bit of it.
Well,
but
you
over there,
heard me before we came on air. I did ask Ciaran about what he got in his exams. He said, I did all right.
Exactly.
First in the class, first class honours. You probably got a load of other distinctions as well. Anyway, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so over there, it can be the opposite. I cannot say to everybody by any means, not to tell off every American on a public podcast, but can be a case where they won't be as good, but they'll tell you that they're very, very good. So you can see through that a little bit, but I don't think it's overly so. But I think Irish people do very well over there because they have that humble nature.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of going back to the question on, what parts did we feel maybe didn't add value? I don't think there's actually any parts of Y Combinator that don't add value if you buy into it. Mm-hmm. And now it's different if you think like that and you say, I don't want to go to that talk. I don't agree with what they're saying. And what's quite funny about the partners over there, so some of the partners, Michael Siebel, for example, co-founder of Twitch, sold for 900 and something million. And he gives you advice and in these talks and says, look, you can take it or you can leave it. And it's quite they're not going to challenge you if you think they're wrong. And the reason they're so confident in what they say is because they have so many data points of companies that have gone through the program. They've seen it all. So they can tell you, look, we've seen 100 companies try exactly this and it didn't work. And this is why it didn't work. And if you want to argue with that, you can argue with that. But they're quite bullish in that approach. So I think if you buy into that ethos, like Dan said, it just forces you to think big. And I suppose that's why, we've partners in North America, in South America as well, and in Mexico, which is, again, quite a random one. But it's thinking outside your comfort zone and being comfortable enough to go there as well.
And where did Mexico come from?
It came to us. Yeah, they just heard about us. Because what we're doing is quite different to how safety's run anywhere. It's being
But
proactive.
why? When I say why, how come other people haven't been either copying you or haven't come up with a similar solution?
There's a couple of competitors out there for sure. But I think we're just the way we're doing. We're incredibly. You talked about focus. We are very focused in what we're doing, and most importantly, why we're trying to achieve what we're doing, and how we want to position ourselves in the market. Of being these, new kids on the block and whatnot. We didn't do any marketing into it. We have an awesome head of marketing now, but prior to that, we did pretty shag all really. But we just got our name out there through a couple of customers. And
but how? Fellows listening to this podcast are saying, "Oh yeah, they make it sound a bit too easy."
Yeah.
Are you lucky bastards?
Yeah,
Basically,
but I think really
I think it's. I suppose it's being a small bit relentless.
Yeah.
What does relentless mean in terms of hours? How hard do you really work?
well, for context, Ciaran did a Saturday evening. I say evening, it was a Saturday evening, Sunday morning to 6 a.m. coding session himself.
Yeah, so maybe just for context on that. So we've been quite lucky, and one of my favorite things about building a company isn't, building the product. Yes, the product is really exciting, but it's actually building the team and the people that come in around you. And we've been very, very lucky in the people that we've been able to bring in. And what's quite funny for me is, I started off and our very first hire, Ciaran, who came from UCD, originally from South India, came over to Ireland, did a conversion masters. And Dan actually reached out as Dan does, and Ciaran actually thought it was a spam mail. We were trying to hire him. We'd no money at the time, but he decided to work for us. So myself and Ciaran, for months and months on end, for writing lines and lines of code. It's got to the stage now where I maybe get 5% of my time to write code. So the weekend is when I can kind of sneak a few commits into the code base. I given out to on Monday morning when I'm not following the processes that the guys and girls have set up. But the team for me is what I really enjoy, and we always say it's being able to bring people in that work really well together, and enjoy their job and enjoy what they do because they're making an impact at the end of the day.
18 million. That's a lot of money, as I keep saying. Who decided it was going to be 18, not 28, not 8? And who went about it, and how did you go about it? And fill in the blanks, please, either, both.
Yeah, I think we didn't intend to raise that much, I think, originally. I think we went in for 14, was it, or something like that? But what we've done as part of our round, I think that's how we've separated ourselves from everybody else raising. Albeit I think our tech and our business is quite strong in the ethos and the vision we're going towards. But I do think it wasn't made up or anything. We only took on investors who could push the business, like Elkstone, who were one of our first backers in the round. And a big part of that was only taking on VCs who could open up doors for us. And most importantly, we also have strategics investors who people who not only can open doors, but have a vested interest in what we're doing and understand what we're doing. So we didn't go knocking on doors and just say, hey, give us cash, we want to go run the business. We brought people in who could push it.
And you say we. Who's we now? Did you go, or have you got somebody who represented you?
All us. Yeah, we did every bit of the
wow.
funding round. Yeah.
So you are sitting in, where is your HQ? I know that you're Ciaran down in Limerick. Dan, where do you operate from?
We're currently on Bagot Street. We've got a whole team there, and then we have we're moving to the top of Dame Street in a couple of weeks now.
So from Bagot Street or wherever, are you making phone calls to various VCs and saying, listen, we have a product here, we need to raise some cash? And simple as that, cold call?
Yeah, I think with COVID, you don't have to fly out to VCs anymore. We raised our, I think 12 million from a bedroom. It wasn't very hard to get in touch with them. And I think if you have the right proposition, people tend to listen.
I think a big part of it as well, and come back to what Dan said about bringing in VCs who can push the business. Part of that push is actually allowing us to build a network. Mm-hmm. And yes, Y Combinator was massively helpful. There's a demo day at the end of it where Dan got to put on some makeup in front of a camera and do a 1 minute pitch, which was quite intense. But off the back of that, we got maybe 100 inbounds from VCs. So I think Dan's calendar for the next literally 4 weeks was back to back talking to VCs.
That is powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to the likes of Elkstone or the likes of Playfair, who are some of our backers in London, the network that they can expose you to. And really, I suppose the ethos that we go out with is, as Dan said, we don't go out looking for money per se. We go out looking for advice, looking for intros that, maybe the VC mightn't necessarily be interested in investing, but they surely have links in the industry that are relevant to us.
And how do you ask that question? You say you're terminating a conversation. Do you say, look, I know you're not going to give me any money. Can you make me an introduction, or make an introduction for me to John or Mary or whatever?
I think that conversation has to come up before they make the decision. And I think what's really important is that it's a transaction at the end of the day. So, obviously the VC has the leverage because they have the cash in the bank. But you got to believe that you have some leverage too in your value prop. So I think, there's nothing wrong in going into a first meeting saying, look, these are the backers that we have at the moment. This is why we've went with them. And what we'd really like to see is, what kind of links do you have in the industry? And I think, VCs really respect that and they appreciate that conversation because it becomes a two-way transaction then, as opposed to you just looking for, cash, which can often end up, maybe not the outcome that you want.
Now, as I say, 18 million, where can that bring you?
Quite far, yes. We've a good bit of runway now. We built, like you said, team of 26, and we're expanding out to the US, certainly North America, making our own team there. So we do have resellers in the Americas, but we'll be building it there as well.
Well, I'm going to bring you to Connecticut.
We heard, yeah, you're already bought in.
And beyond that, where can you go? You say Mexico. I mean, the world is literally your oyster. And in a funny way, sometimes, do you ever get overwhelmed with offers and potential? Like Europe is 550 million people who all work.
Yeah. We are quite focused, I guess. The industry that we're in as well, and that's probably a mistake we made at the start. We went too wide, and we said because safety as an industry is quite horizontal. Works across multiple verticals. Everybody has to be safe on the front line. So we've since kind of in the last kind of 6, 7, 8 months peeled that back to just certain industries like ports, logistics, and warehousing.
And you're doing it with, I see, Dublin Port, amongst others.
Yeah.
And is it peculiar to each industry, each sector, that there are specific problem areas? I suppose if you're near an aircraft, you could be taken out by a propeller, which is unlikely to happen in a zoo, but whatever. Yeah.
We actually had a really funny one at a zoo. Only a few weeks ago, someone asked if we could identify polar bears because someone else got attacked by one, and we can't, surprisingly. So the Antarctic isn't one of our markets just yet. But the funny thing is about safety, I guess, it's quite similar in the way we built it. Well, maybe you better talking about the tech on that.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the industry, it's a really nice industry to work with, because I suppose the people that we're talking to, the people that I get to talk to, that Dan gets to talk to, are really bought in to what they're trying to do in keeping their workforce safe. And I think, again, that starts a conversation. It doesn't start as a transaction, it starts as a conversation. And for me on the technical side, what I really enjoy doing is talking to maybe people who come from a non-technical background. And I suppose that the whole thesis behind the technology that we're building is that computer vision as a technology is extremely complicated. But there's this new barrier that's come in around privacy and security. And this is some of the research that I was doing previous, trying to understand, they're trying to pull each other in two different directions sometimes. You have the people writing the regulations, but then you also have the people building the technology, and sometimes they clash. So I love getting in the room with IT teams, with health and safety people, and trying to understand how you can make that kind of dialogue flow a bit easier and put the right information in front of the right people, and then bring that back to the product and technical team and say, right, we might need to build this aspect into the product to enable Dan and the sales team to go out and sell harder. I
don't want to go down the usual little rabbit holes that I do, but are you ever worried, and a one-word answer please, of that what privacy could mean, or that AI could mean to our privacy?
No, is the straight answer.
God, I must bring you back for another chat about that one.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area. I'm actually, I think it's at the start of November. I'm on a panel discussion in Web Summit, and that's the exact topic, talking about privacy, talking about security and AI. And I think what people are afraid about when they think about AI is that it's going to come in and it's going to replace us, and we're going to be obsolete in 5 years' time. And I think part of, there's technology, there's legislation. In the middle, people forget about the education. And it's really important to be able to educate the people you're selling to say, look, this is a tool that augments the data, the information that you have that helps you make decisions. It's not here to replace you. It's not here to do your job better. It's just here to help you. And that's the whole notion behind what's called narrow AI, as opposed to general AI, which is the Terminator type things that you see in the movies.
Second last question is, what value will the company be before you sell it? See what I've done there now? I've given you a double loaded question.
Yeah, it's very good. I think when people say, before you're going to sell it, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people have different ways of thinking about it. But I think if you build a business to sell, you'll never put your whole heart into it. So we very much like. A
Y Combinator must have taught you.
They do it. Yeah, but some of them are
drive and sell.
Yeah, but some of them are humongous. Like you walk down Dublin, and especially now, you see the likes of HubSpot and Salesforce with their names on the side of the buildings. And why can't we do that? And Stripe are probably the only Irish company that started to do that. So there's no reason why we can't. Especially there's some companies in our space valued at 2.2 billion, just with safety and helping people out. And I think where we're going is trying to aim for that sign on the side of the building.
Okay, so that gives me kind of a note to come back to you when you're about 2.2 billion in value that you'll be selling at that stage.
Look, if you have the checkbook ready,
Okay. You do know, I hope that you got the emails because we have been corresponding for a period to get you up here. Hire in a heartbeat. Who wants to hire in a heartbeat? Ciaran, who would you hire in a heartbeat?
I think we had a conversation about this. Yeah.
Well, I hope you have one each, do you?
We actually do. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And I suppose two people that we've kind of worked indirectly with for the last...
And directly.
For the last 26, 28 years. Kind of glorified personal assistants in some ways. But I think, all jokes aside, I'd bring on Brian Amara, my dad. I think Dan would bring on Leonard Hobbs, his dad. They've both been in the industry for 30 years. And I think if we look back to the young scientist that we mentioned a while ago, that's where it started for us, and our dads got us into that and brought us through that process. And I think it'd be quite fun to bring the two dads on.
Yeah.
To
now to
help
skyrocket our pension scheme. That's the only thing. So we have to be wary of that. We have made offers indirectly over dinners.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes.
I presume they know each other.
They do, yeah. Unfortunately, we can't get a word in whenever it's four of us.
Early days when we were doing our initial pitches, and we had loads of hiccups in our pitch decks. We had Brian and Leonard on Zoom. And Brian was below me, Dan was right beside Leonard in the room. And they were the VCs, or trying to be the VCs anyway, asking the hard questions. But look, it worked out in the end. So I think that the help they've given us along the way has been much appreciated.
Dad always says that's his time investment, and he's hoping to get that back at some stage.
Don't worry, he will.
Hope so.
That is unbelievable. When are you going to come back to me? Because when will there be another big stepping stone in the company's history? When do you think that might be?
Yeah, we have our heads down for the next little while. Anyway, we've raised our money.
Raise the cash, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But you'll be going again, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully that's the plan.
Hundreds of millions next time.
We'll see who opens the door. We'll see how the market goes first. So
don't ever worry about markets, as you may or may not know, as in stockbroking. Markets go up, markets go down, but real businesses continue, and you'll see value where value is. That was very deep of me.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us on that great business show. That's Dan Hobbs, August Ciaran O'Mara of Protex AI. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you
so
much.
Everyday accounting can be a bit of a drama for SMEs. However, BigRedCloud.com takes the drama away with its simple and easy to use cloud-based accounting and payroll software designed for SME owners. Raise and send invoices, manage VAT reports and obligations, run management reports, link directly to Irish banks, automatically import purchase invoices, and so much more. All with 5-star customer support. BigRedCloud.com, 100% Irish owned and a proud member of Team GBS.
Viscosity. When you shave, you want the highest viscosity because it helps the blade run smoother. De facto, the world's best shaving oil, has incredible viscosity. That's why De facto leaves your face, underarms, or legs nick-free. Higher viscosity makes blades last longer. De facto is the best for your skin and your pocket. DeFactoShave.com.
All that great business show advertisers are Team GBS approved. Back them.
And just before my next guest, during the week I was contacted by the lads behind the Gaelic Games board game Banish Store, who pitched up on the podcast last year. They told me that last Christmas the game, aimed at mainly primary school kids, sold out in 5 weeks. This year they say that limited stocks are available in stores like Smith's, Arts and Hobby and Eason. So get off that bench and go and buy it before it's too late. Plus, for those with rallies in the States, Banish Store is being shipped to the US this year for the first time. BanishStoreBoardGame.ie will find them. They are proud members of Team GBS. Now, you all know we love all our guests equally, but some more equally than others, particularly when they say nice things about us on LinkedIn and Twitter before they've even come in the door. Mary Liz Trant, who is Director of the National Apprenticeship Office, wants you all to know about the new apprenticeship structures, including the National Apprenticeship Office. That includes 66 national programs that she says are a smart option for businesses seeking and wishing to retain great talent, something we're always trying to do. Mary Liz, welcome to That Great Business Show.
Thanks very much, Conal.
And thank you so much for all the nice things that you were saying about us on LinkedIn. This is your first podcast.
That's right, yeah.
Are you all nervous?
A little bit, but you're putting me at my ease already.
You have taught for many years, so being in front of classes and talking publicly and, not a bother.
Hopefully.
You started as a French and English mentor, yeah?
That's right, yeah. And before that, I was actually working with early school leavers for a couple of years and got the teaching bug, and then went on and qualified and was teaching in Ballyfermot for a while, and then in what was DIT, now Technological University Dublin. So, yeah, teaching.
Tell us the truth. Do you hate that name, Technological University of Dublin? It almost sounds like dud or stud.
Well,
or
the acronym, I never use the short version because I think the full version sounds much better. I think the overall ambition...
DIT was always lovely.
Yeah, I think the ambition behind having technological universities in Ireland is fantastic.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, how come you ended up as director of the National Apprenticeship Office?
So I suppose I started working on apprenticeship about 7-8 years ago when I was still working in the Higher Education Authority. And then I moved to Solas, which is kind of the overall responsibility for apprenticeship. And I've been kind of working on expansion of the system since 2015 or so. And then last year, when the minister published and government published a new action plan kind of to bring apprenticeship into another new phase, I put my hand up for it. I said, look, I'd absolutely love to get the new structures up and running, start up a new organisation for the first few years, and then probably hang up my clogs and hand it over to somebody else.
Government and an action plan, does that just fill you full of dread, fear and despondency?
Absolutely not. I love the word action. I suppose
it's when you put it together with government action plan.
Well, I mean, it all depends, and I think this action plan is going to be one that people are going to say, yep, that was delivered. There was a lot achieved, and people are going to be really happy with it. I suppose that's my aim and the aim of the team that are working really hard on making it reality. There's so much to be done. You mentioned in the introduction, we've got 66 national apprenticeship programs now. There's actually 30 more in the pipeline. Within a few years, we might have close to 100 national apprenticeship programs available. And while we're not going to ever be like Germany, we're getting close to, I suppose, having apprenticeships on the map in a really serious way in the country with 100 programs.
We'll get to Germany in a second because they are the exemplars of what you're trying to achieve. But why did apprenticeships kind of go out of fashion here? Because they were brilliant.
So I suppose I would say, Conal, I suppose my experience, and even thinking back to what it was like for me when I was in school, in a girls' secondary school, the word apprenticeship never, ever crossed the lips of anybody in our school. I never heard a word about it. I would have loved to have been a carpenter or a joiner. I would have loved it. I would have really been interested in that if somebody had been saying to me, what about this option? And I never heard a word about it. So I do think that apprenticeship has been something that hasn't had the recognition or the value in this country that it could have had or, needs to have had.
But it used to have. I mean, geez, I tell you, everybody loves their carpenters, their plumbers, their electricians, etc. And it is still an apprenticeship system.
Absolutely. And hugely valued within certain industries and in certain, and in the country. And traditional craft apprenticeships are the backbone of our economy and will continue to be so. With things, housing for all, climate action, apprenticeships are more important than they ever were. But there's always been, I think, and this is a personal opinion, a kind of a view about apprenticeship that it was something that people did if they were good with their hands or if they weren't necessarily as academic as their peers. And that is so not true.
But even if it weren't true, it makes a lot of sense if you're good with your hands to become a joiner or a carpenter because you're good with your hands.
Absolutely. But it's not this value judgment that it seems to have had, that this is, and we still hear it. Like last month, I was in the RDS, Higher Options was on and World Skills Ireland. And there were still students coming up, including girls. And it was great to see so many more young women coming up to talk about and interested in apprenticeship options. And they were saying, we're still getting separated out into the group that gets the apprenticeship talk and the group that gets the going to college talk. Apprenticeship is all about learning and going to college and getting qualification. It's just a different way of doing it, and an incredibly valuable way, because people go into the workplace, they get those work-based skills, and employers are delighted because they have people who are work ready and already contributing within a few months of starting. So to me, that's the key message we need to get landed in Ireland. We're not there yet, but hopefully within the next couple of years we will be.
So talk to me about some, not all, please, of the 66 national programmes and maybe even some of the new 30 ones as well. Any of the unusual ones that people would go and say, what? I don't believe that.
So there's one in arboriculture, which for people are kind of going, what the hell is that?
Let me guess that, trees?
Yeah, it's trees. And it's basically that really important service where people are skilled in trimming, cutting trees,
Tree surgery.
Overhead, tree surgery. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's an apprenticeship in that. It's 2 years. It's led out of, it's over in the West is where the lead body is, but it's a national programme. And there's employers all over the country taking on arboriculture apprentices and they get a full qualification and are able to go up any tree and safely cut it and, make sure that our overhead lines are clear, and, parks and so on are clear and safe. And, after storms, the trees are safely, trimmed and disposed of.
And a job for life, because trees keep growing.
That's right. So that's one really unusual one.
Any other ones?
Another one to mention, which people mightn't be aware of. We have an apprenticeship leading to a PhD now for principal engineers. So these are senior engineers in companies who probably kind of might have done a degree or come up through the pathway in their company and are very experienced and would really love to get an advanced qualification on the job. And so that program is underway. It's a 4-year apprenticeship. And at the end of it, principal engineers will come out with a PhD.
To what benefit, and who gives them that PhD?
So that PhD is awarded, the lead university is actually University of Limerick, who are very experienced in work-based learning and cooperative learning between education and enterprise.
I love UL. I've done a lot of work with them. I love them.
And absolutely. It's one of my, where I studied part of the time as well, super university, among all the others. So the huge benefit, Conal, is for individuals, that they're getting recognition for their skill and their expertise, but also they're learning a lot. So by going through a work-based learning apprenticeship at that very advanced level, the actual what they get out of it and what their company gets out of it is huge. It's about halfway through the first group. Already the feedback is really positive, and it's going to be really interesting to hear what those graduates have to say in about another 1 to 2 years about the benefits for them of that apprenticeship. But it gives the message that apprenticeship it's a mode of learning, and it can lead to the most advanced qualifications and all the way up the spectrum. So, I think as a signal of, what apprenticeship offers to both individuals and enterprise, it's really powerful.
Well, you kind of touched on it earlier there about the absence of housing in this country, and therefore we need everybody and every skill that can build a house. And there was a big drop-off, I think, in apprenticeships within the construction industry. Again, I just sometimes wonder, why would that be? How did that happen? Or is that due to the post-2008 crash?
Yeah, that was the big problem, where when the crash happened in 2008, there were huge amounts of apprentices in the country. The construction industry got a major hit. They weren't able to employ apprentices anymore. So literally within about 2 years, going from about 8,000 apprentices registering every year, it went down to under 1,000.
Whoa, that's big. Okay.
A whole load of apprentices were made redundant. And there was a big exercise had to be done to find a way to get those apprentices through and qualified, without having an employer anymore, or, really struggle to kind of have employers to provide the work-based learning part of it. So that was a huge blow. And one of the things we've been working on and looking at since is how do we avoid, if ever there was a shock like that again, so that the system is more robust, that apprentices don't get... aren't at the real problem end, I suppose, of something like that happening and losing their qualification or their training and losing their jobs, and us not having a plan B.
Oh, you made me think about so many things there about how to avoid it. Well, maybe if we had proper financial regulators and central bankers and the way that it trickles all the way down to construction apprenticeships. Anyway, that is for another story. Talk to me about what you guys can do in terms of apprenticeship for my favourite people, my SMEs. What's happening in that space, and what should employers and future employers know about what's available?
So very interesting, actually, and just as a kind of an introduction to this, Conal, this is the 4th year we're running Employer of the Year Awards for apprenticeship. So apprenticeship employers who we want to acknowledge and celebrate. And this year we've got a very particular focus on micro and small companies. And we're asking all who are involved in kind of supporting the apprenticeship system to look around and see and nominate great micro and small employers who are using apprenticeship as a talent pipeline.
And just to win that, what do they have to do, or what do they have to have done?
So there's a nomination process. It's free. And so basically, and they can even nominate themselves and talk about how they're, as pioneering organisations, how they are using apprenticeship to grow their business, to invest in talent, to retain talent, because that's the thing. We haven't got the Irish research yet, but all the international research shows that if you invest in somebody, and I know you've covered it in other podcasts, and you invest in an apprentice, they are inclined to stay with you afterwards for at least 2 to 3 years more. So you get that benefit and that retention, because people, it's a human thing. If you're investing in somebody, they'll be inclined to invest back. So we're really hoping to get a really good showing now because there are a lot of micro and small employers who are using apprenticeship. But it's to give that visibility and also encourage others to use it as well. Like the numbers we know, and of small and micro companies in the Irish economy are enormous.
250,000 and growing.
Yeah. And we want way more of them to be actually thinking about and choosing apprenticeship to get really good talent and keep that talent as well.
So talk to me about a company, it doesn't matter what sector, what can they do to start an apprenticeship scheme within that company?
So we have an online expression of interest is the first place to start. So people go to apprenticeship.ie and they can just fill out very simply, a little bit of detail, their name, their company name and so on. And they're contacted straight away then to set up a discussion.
Mary Liz,
yeah.
Answer this honestly. You say straight away.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
I have dealings with another state organisation, and it's taken me 3 weeks to get an answer, but that's a different story.
Okay, well,
but you will actually do it immediately.
Well, so we have a network of 60 people around the country that we call them authorised officers, because they're able to work with employers directly on our behalf.
And they work to your office, do they?
Well, they work in education training boards, but they link in with us very. We work with them very directly. And they're the ones who contact the employer. So they're all on the ground in the regions. They're busy, but they're very good at getting back to employers.
Okay.
So certainly all the feedback I've got is that it works smoothly and efficiently. And they make contact and sort of have it, there's what are they interested in doing? What apprenticeship are they interested in taking on apprentices? And then there's a visit is organised. And there's a run through of, what equipment do you need, training, just to make sure that the environment is right for the apprentice. There's a recommendation made, and then they're approved as an employer, and then they can get on the road to registering an apprentice and taking them on.
And the area of cash, money, payment, who pays what to whom?
So employers in general are responsible for paying the salary of the apprentice.
And is that set by statute or by agreement? So, for example, I'm going to take something, say a printer. If there's an apprentice printer in Galway, is she going to be paid the same as an apprentice printer in Wexford?
So there's a number of areas where there's sectoral agreements on pay. So the big areas like construction, engineering, motor and so on, there are. In all of the other areas, including all the newer apprenticeships, it's a matter for the industry and the employer. The state pays a contribution. So there's if it's craft, the training allowance is paid while apprentices are off the job. And then on the newer ones, employers can claim €2,000 per apprentice per year as a contribution to salary.
And what does craft mean in your world?
It's the traditional apprenticeships like electrical, plumbing, carpentry and joinery. There's 25 of them, all named, very clear.
And that brings me very neatly on to the next 30, because they're obviously non-traditional, I'm assuming. What are you going to bring on?
Well, a number are kind of, areas that have been around a long time. Like, so one of the most recent ones we've approved, which is really interesting, is in immersive technology. absolutely cutting edge. So there's a group over, and it's led by a group in Mayo, Sligo and Leitrim Education and Training Board working with industry, and they're going to be developing a qualification, employers taking on people working on that whole area, that really emerging area of immersive technology, new technologies, AI, all of that. Then we have
just on that one, because that immediately, I imagine lots of things, but on this one, I imagine that probably a university degree would be needed in that area, no?
Well, you see, that's maybe a view that people have had about lots of areas in technology, but we have 3 tech apprenticeships leading to level 6 awards, including in network engineering and software development now. And what has been proven now, and it's accepted much more broadly, is that there are entry-level positions in tech that are really valuable and needed. And yes, more advanced levels of skill and knowledge are needed as well. But there are opportunities and there's a need for people right the way up the skill set. So while people may enter, and like for example, we've a level 6 award in cybersecurity. We've also got one at level 8, an honours degree level in cybersecurity. So there's a progression route. So people can come into a company, develop their skills and then progress if they so wish.
And your employer might even pay for you to go to college, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's what happens with the apprenticeship. That commitment, an employer commits to releasing the apprentice for their training, for the duration of that training period.
So you were telling me the good things about the immersive technology apprenticeship. What other goodies have you got?
So in a more established area, we have never had an apprenticeship in civil engineering. And so they're out of Atlantic Technological University in Sligo. They're leading on with industry on developing 4 apprenticeships from level 6 up to master's level 9, different occupations, but again, up that ladder of progression of skill in civil engineering, which is going to be really interesting and contribute, I suppose, to all of that demand that's there now on building and construction in Ireland. There's also a roofing and cladding apprenticeship coming, which will have all the most modern methods of cladding that adds to the traditional kind of, roofing, timber-based skills that are there as well. And there's a number of additional, like data analyst. The Central Statistics Office is going to be working and supporting, very interested in that one, data analyst apprenticeship. And I suppose there's a whole, it's quite diverse, the kind of the range that are coming down the line.
Who puts forward ideas for what is going to become an apprenticeship?
So apprenticeships are kind of very firmly industry led. So, it's about industry kind of identifying and making the case for what's needed and where they have a gap. And why an apprenticeship particularly is going to meet that need, because there's an awful lot available through the overall education and training system. So in general, what happens is an industry group will come together, will make a proposal, will work with an education provider to put it together, and then it's presented to. We work with the National Apprenticeship Office, works with the group, and then it's presented to a group. It's the National Apprenticeship Alliance, which makes a recommendation on whether it goes ahead or not.
So what more will we see over the next coming years? Are there more and more and more? I mean, is there an endless amount of apprenticeships that we can see?
Well, I suppose probably not an endless amount, but I think the commitment and the ambition is there for apprenticeship to become really a part of the overall skills development offering in the country. And if you remember last year, the minister, and he was very involved in it himself, Minister Simon Harris, apprenticeship opportunities were added to the CAO platform for the first time.
What does that actually mean? So
that means that last year, November, December, January, parents and school leavers were sitting down around the kitchen table going, okay, what's the CAO form going to look like? They were looking at the website and they weren't just seeing higher education courses, they were also seeing further education courses, and they were seeing apprenticeship options. So all the 66 programs that are available, information about all of those and how they could go about getting, finding an apprenticeship and keeping their options open, because it wasn't a case of choosing one or the other. All of those options could be explored up to the point of decision. And also we had a free phone number so that people could phone up and talk it through and find out, because at the end of the day, to get an apprenticeship, you have to have an employer take you on it for a job. So that's the difference, that people
and that's
need to
kind of
understand.
a difficulty as much as a difference, because if you want to take again my famous printer, if you want to be a printer, maybe you don't know people who print or who's possibly looking for apprenticeships or apprentices in printing.
Yeah, and that's where, what we say is there's a little bit of research involved here, so a bit of looking around. And also what we found, and there's a huge amount of feedback, particularly, everywhere in the country. If you see an employer and you kind of go, jeepers, I would love to do an apprenticeship with that employer. If you're willing to go and knock on their door and say, can you please take me on as an apprentice? Employers in general are dying to say yes.
But hang on a second now. The people we're talking about who may be going on these courses, in the main, will be very young. They'll be school leavers. There's no way, in my little world anyway, that a school leaver is going to say, God, I'd love to work with Murphy and Son, the printers. They wouldn't even know.
You'd be surprised, Conal.
Surprise me.
So I met hundreds of school leavers, 6th years, 5th years, 6th years last month in the RDS. And the amount of them who were had done their research, had done their homework, and had said, yeah, I know an employer that I want to approach.
Good for them.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
Absolutely. And you see that, and that's, can you think about how impressed an employer is going to be as well? Somebody who's actually willing to say, I've done my homework and I'd really like to work for you. And, will you please take me on as an apprentice? And okay, it's a big, it's an investment by an employer. But as I was saying, in general, employers, particularly if they've come through the apprenticeship route themselves, they're very keen to support and help, give an opportunity to somebody, whether it's a young person or an older person, through the apprenticeship route.
Well, I presume also that when you say it's a commitment, there is, in terms of payments or in terms of salaries or wages, is that it's going to be a percent of the full wage.
That's right.
So, people win here.
Yeah, and what also a lot of employers will say is that apprentices are contributing very quickly after they start. And it's not just contributing in a very superficial way. They are actually, really adding to the business bottom line and to development and new ideas and diversity and all of those really great things that employers, want and value.
So the second final question will be on that 30 of the new 30, anything else unusual coming through that we should say, wow, that's a nice one?
Let me see. I'm just trying to think of the list now, and I should have brought the list with me.
Can you? I don't know why I even think of this. Can you become apprenticed to a jeweler?
Not at the moment. I don't
know why I just chose that one.
But, we've had interest from the whole that creative side of things, and actually a really interesting kind of partial. Just a few discussions, I suppose, we've had about manufacturing and clothing manufacturing and how that would be a fantastic opportunity to bring that back in Ireland.
There's a lovely woman called Annalise Duffy, and I'm sure she's listening, my favourite lady of linen, who has been on this programme, and she is determined to bring linen making or linen manufacturing, not actually growing, but to the actual making up of garments back to business here.
And if Annalise is listening, looking forward to talking to Annalise again, because we've had a few conversations, and Annalise has super ideas about how to do this, and a fantastic background herself, her old family tradition of and just knowing what's possible in manufacturing, clothing manufacturing in Ireland. So I think that would be a fantastic apprenticeship, and I think I just think it would be a super one to see coming down the track.
And since it's coming up to that time of year for people who are looking for presents, Annalise's shirts are divine. They're just exceptionally good. So
yep,
there you go.
I can second that, because I've bought one as a present for somebody, and they are absolutely exquisite.
So what next do you want from We Are Team GBS? What can we do for you at the National Apprenticeship Office?
Well, I suppose it'd be lovely to, first of all, to put out the website, Conal, so apprenticeship.ie, if people could, take a look at it.
That's an easy one to remember.
That's right. And also, we've got the Employer of the Year Awards that I mentioned. The closing date is the 1st of November. So there's a couple of weeks left.
Very quick, very soon.
Yeah, very soon. But the nomination will take somebody no more than an hour to put together. So an hour of your time to celebrate, recognise an employer, that would be fantastic. And the other wonderful thing that's coming up, and just to put it out there, it might be over by the time this podcast comes out. But
we're going out tomorrow morning.
Oh, super. Okay, so it'll be before that. We've 500 people coming to the round room next Tuesday. to celebrate and hear who will be the 2022 Apprentice of the Year. Minister Simon Harris is making the awards. So this is, I suppose, a really big showcase of celebration of apprenticeship in Ireland. The first time we've done it.
This is that great business show, so you can tell us now. Do you know who's won?
If I told you, I'd have to
kill me.
Yeah.
Final question to you, Mary Liz Trant. Who would Mary Liz hire in a heartbeat?
The person I'd hire in a heartbeat, this was a tough one, but then it was easy in the end, would be Vera Powell.
Who is Vera?
Vera Powell is the manager of the Ireland women's football team.
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
Sorry. I thought you said Powell.
No,
Powell.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah.
Vera is now, she's like Jack Charlton. She's now Irish, isn't she?
Well, the reason being, if I could say just very briefly, I think what Vera has done for women's football and with the Irish women's football team, building that confidence and that visibility and that success has been phenomenal. And that's the kind of energy and commitment to change in a really fantastic way that I think we're doing in apprenticeship. So, and obviously with that sporting angle and lens, so if I had the choice, to get her for a period of time, I think she'd be super.
You know where she'd be super? She'd be super presenting your prizes next Tuesday. I presume she's a wee bit busy at the moment, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, Mary Liz, thank you so much for joining us on That Great Business Show. Do come in again when you are launching other apprenticeships. We want to hear. We like the idea. It's a great idea. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
And not everything has to be academic. Good
That's
idea,
right.
though. So that is it from the Great Business Show, episode 110. And if you're in the poo with your business and you need some moral support, have a listen back to Sinead Crowther, founder of Tonsticks. Did you hear Sinead by any chance? She was on the last week's episode. Her story is simply extraordinary. If anything bad could have happened to her, it happened to her. Did she come through it? Yes, she did. Is she employing loads of people? Yes, she is. Has she got her own factory? Yes, she does. Is she going exporting worldwide? Yes, she does. Wow, that's all I'll say
Fantastic.
about her. And as I say, episode 109, that must be, yeah. And she's come out the other side smiling. She is inspirational. Do make sure to press the share button on LinkedIn and do it now, please. Send the podcast link to your pals in business via WhatsApp. They love you for thinking of them. And you can advertise with us too. Give me a shout on LinkedIn if you'd like to know more. We record here at the Dublin South Podcast Studios. Today's man pushing his buttons is sound engineer Lee Brennan. And later, Neil Oliver will add that extra sparkle that makes us the best sounding podcast ever. If you would like to record a podcast, contact Peter Rice at the Dublin South Podcast Studios. And if you'd like the media group, that's our company, to produce a podcast for you, or your business, or one on your favourite podcast topic, then do talk to me, Conal O'Moran. Find me on LinkedIn. All of our great business insights and tips are brought to you, as always, thanks to our sponsor, De Facto Shaving Oil, the world's best all-natural shaving oil. Will they back us? Please back them. DeFactoShave.com will get them. And do not forget to buy Business Plus magazine, where we now have our regular column all about the podcast. And I think Willow's Ingredients is coming up on the next episode, or the next issue of Business Plus magazine. That is it from me, Conal O'Moran. Míle buchas for listening. Agus slán tom.